What is up, NFL fans? Welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Around. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith. Coach, how's it going?
What's up, Jeff? How are you?
Doing great. It's finally getting warm. Man, it's been cold as hell here in Maryland. It's June, and I couldn't believe the other day I was wearing pants and a hooded sweatshirt. So it's starting to warm up. I feel like summer is upon us. And while that's the lull in the NFL season, hey, you living in Beach Town, I'm sure you're excited as well.
The town is filling up. The idiots are arriving, Jeff. The idiots are arriving in mass. And I say that respectfully because they keep my property value high, but they also seem to treat stop signs as suggestions. And like to just drive. They're not averse to driving 12 miles an hour while they look for parking spots. So
I have always wondered people that live in beach towns, how they view in season versus out of season and stuff. And well, you just described it as you're not fine. We'll put it that way.
It's a necessary evil.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're getting ready for mandatory mini camps to come for some teams, and that's going to be in the next few weeks. We'll talk about that. We're also entering the lull of the NFL season as they prepare for training camps. Let's start off with a topic of what is the next blockbuster offseason move that we'll see in the NFL. There's a lot of players that are looking for new contracts, whether it's TJ Watt. You talk about Parsons down in Dallas, Hendrickson in Cincinnati. There's potential trades and rumors already swirling. The Steelers have been mixed in with some of those, with talking about Chris Olave, and then most recently Jonnu Smith down in Miami, or Jalen Ramsey is another one. Coach, if I'd ask you to give your prediction, what is the next blockbuster move in the NFL offseason?
I think some of those deals will probably get done, but before then, I won't be shocked if we see a big name move, because now we're in the post June 1 designations, and that alleviates some of the cap issues and some of the contract hits. It'll get tricky when you look at their specifics with their dollars. Like Jalen Ramsey, for example. I mean, he's got a $20 million deal where all of it's guaranteed. And then there's another like 18 or so million that whoever acquires him is going to be on the hook for a season from now. So you get a big name like Ramsey to move, and obviously they got to work out the finances, whether they're going to restructure. He's now 30. So it's a deal. Like whoever's going to take him on, I think has to feel like he's a missing piece to a championship run. Yeah. You're not going to take him on if you feel like you're a rebuilding team. So he'll be a big name. I think I would be surprised if he didn't move, simply because there's an awful lot of smoke surrounding that situation.
Okay, let me ask you if you think this would be blockbuster or not. And I'm thinking along the lines of more players and contracts, not so much extensions or new deals. If Stephon Diggs gets cut by New England, is that a blockbuster move?
It's a big name.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic about Stephon Diggs right now. He's coming off of a season where he was mediocre in Houston. He blew out his ACL. He's not going to probably start the season as he recovers from that in New England, which is a team in a rebuild. And he's coming out of this situation where I don't know what was in that pink baggie in that video, but it is not a good look, Jeff. It is not. It doesn't look good. When he says to the girls, "Don't take it all," that's not a good look, man.
No.
So, and Mike Vrabel's a no-nonsense guy up there in New England. And I think he subscribes to the Bill Belichick code. If you're a rebuilding team and you got a veteran coming off an ACL, that's a bit of a luxury. And they may decide like, hey, look, we're not going to deal with this and move on.
Vrabel's going to have to make a call, because in my opinion, this is where's that line in the sand? So if you're a head coach and you've got a player out there perceived to be handing out some type of crack cocaine to females on a boat. I mean, this is like, it says like Fred Smoot and the sex boat written all over it, but that's neither here nor there. You got to put that line and say, you aren't doing this under my regime. If you do this, you're gone. Stephon Diggs, like you said, big name. They have, and I know that Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk looked into his contract and said they can get out of a lot of guaranteed money for him if certain things happen, where it falls on the calendar post June 1. They have some outs. And so since they have some outs, I wouldn't be shocked if that's the next thing. Let me throw another one at you. I think that Kirk Cousins gets traded. I don't know to where yet, but I think that Atlanta's trying to unload his deal. They're trying to find a team that would like him. And you know what team keeps coming in up is Minnesota. Could he go back to the Vikings if JJ McCarthy does pan out? Minnesota doesn't really have a lot of depth behind JJ McCarthy, who has zero experience in the NFL. Would that be blockbuster for you?
That makes sense. I think would it be blockbuster at this stage of Kirk Cousins' career? No, but it would be a big name moving. I think we forget about Kirk Cousins. He's kind of, with all the quarterbacks shuffling around, his name's been sort of dormant.
Yeah.
And he didn't have like an acrimonious exit from Minnesota. It wasn't like, I mean, they basically decided we're ready to move on, and he went and sought what ultimately was for him a great deal that he got from Atlanta, and from Atlanta's perspective, not so great. But I don't know. Yeah, again, details. How much would Minnesota have to take on of that contract? How much would there be a restructure? I don't know what the language suggests. But I'll be surprised if he winds up the season as Michael Penix's backup on that deal.
And I'm thinking to myself, what are the teams that are even viable options to want Kirk Cousins? Not a necessity thing where if someone gets hurt. That's a different beast altogether. Pittsburgh comes to mind if they can't get Aaron Rodgers. I would not like it as a Steeler fan, but they come to mind. Brought up Minnesota with JJ McCarthy. I can't think of many other places that would say, yeah, let's try and trade for this guy. Can you think of any other teams?
Maybe the Browns will take him on. They've been collecting quarterbacks.
That was a team that I originally, if you would have said before the draft, Cleveland would have been on that list. But now they have Joe Flacco. They have Kenny Pickett. They drafted 2 players. I don't think they're getting Kirk Cousins unless someone gets hurt. So I just can't think of another team that would want to trade Kirk Cousins and potentially pick up some of the baggage, meaning financial baggage. I just can't see.
I mean, New Orleans, but would Atlanta trade him in the division? Right. I don't know if they would do that. So you're right. His options are fairly limited right now.
And Atlanta might say, we're going to wait because there might be someone that gets hurt in training camp, even in the preseason, and then they're able to get more for him. I don't know. Let's go back to the deals, the contract. Guys that won contracts, they're all pass rushers. Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt. Are those 3, which one gets a deal first, if you had to guess?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, whoever you are, you want to get that deal done first. All 3 of these teams are dragging their heels for various reasons. The hardest one for me to figure out is the Cowboys, because Micah Parsons is 26 years old. TJ Watt is on the other side of 30 now. Hendrickson is around 30. Those are trickier negotiations. They've been with that franchise their entire career. You want to do right by them, but you don't want to overpay for a veteran who may be aging out. That's a tricky negotiation. Micah Parsons is, I don't care where you put him in the rankings, but he's a top 3 edge rusher in the NFL. He's a top 3 player at one of the most important positions in the NFL in his prime. Why Dallas is not trying to get that deal done after the money they've given to other people. Like, it blows you away, their prioritization process. They're throwing money at guys in different directions, and yet here's the best player on their football team, and Jerry Jones is acting like he doesn't even know who the guy's agent is. It's a weird negotiation.
I think that, you bring up, as an organization, they want to get these deals done as soon as possible. Yeah. You want to be the one that gets out in front. And I guarantee you, maybe not Cincinnati, they're kind of backwards. And from what we're hearing from that side of Trey Hendrickson is that they're not really wanting to negotiate too much right now. But other than that, you talk about Pittsburgh, you talk about Dallas, they're probably trying to get a deal done. From a player's perspective and an agent's perspective, they have to be telling their clients, we're not signing right now.
Right.
Because Myles Garrett and Max Crosby set a bar. And there's an assumption that these players are going to set a new bar. And so if you're an agent of a player like TJ Watt, you're not signing a deal now. Why would you sign a deal now? Wait till Micah Parsons gets paid. Then we'll talk about a deal, because we're going to be wanting more than Micah Parsons. And so I think a lot of times fans don't view it necessarily from the player's perspective. They only view it from the organizational perspective. And when they do that, they're forgetting that the players should probably wait. I don't like it. It's not my job, but it's an agent. If I'm representing a client, you're not signing a deal right now. Unless you're, TJ Watt saying, I just want to get this over with. I want to take a fair deal. Give me $1 more than Myles Garrett and I'm a happy man. That's fine. But ultimately, does that make sense to you, coach, that a player would want to just wait?
It does, especially when you consider the fact that Parsons is going to get over 40 million a year, because Garrett's got over 40 million a year.
Right.
Parsons is as good or better a player, and he's younger. Is TJ Watt worth 40 plus million a year at this point in his career? That's a tricky question to answer if you're the Steelers.
But see that those numbers are just they're fake in my opinion, because it's all based on guaranteed dollars and then annual average value, or the annual average basically for your deal. So if TJ Watt signs a deal that in terms of total money is more than Myles Garrett, but he's not making as much guaranteed, he's not making as much per year. Okay, sure. You can manipulate those numbers all you want. But no, that's difficult to say. To say $40 million for a non-quarterback, that sounds asinine to me, if I'm being honest. That sounds completely backwards.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way, yeah. But at the same time, you and I both know the Steelers' record with and without TJ Watt. Now, I don't know how much longer that's going to continue, but they are excellent with him and awful without him. And that is a heck of a piece of leverage to bring to the negotiating table if you're his team.
Yeah. I'm going to take a guess. I think TJ Watt's the next one to get a deal done.
I hope it. I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Trey Hendrickson, if Trey Hendrickson just switches his position to tight end, the Bengals will pay him whatever he wants.
Yes, exactly. Just become a pass catcher.
Yeah, they're not paying anybody other than pass catchers.
All right. We're going to switch gears here. We're not going to spend a ton of time on these other topics, but a story that happened during the NFL draft that no one really talked about because, well, everyone was talking about Shedeur Sanders' fall, and we're talking about Mel Kiper Jr.'s going ballistic, on camera. And this is the Jeff Ulbricht's son. Jeff Ulbricht, who is a coach down in Atlanta, I believe. It's all about how his son got this contact information for these phones that the NFL gives out to their players so that they can be reached by teams and organizations to tell them they've been drafted. And this is where the prank calls came. And it was not just Shedeur Sanders that got prank called. Other players did as well. I never did get your opinion on this situation outside of maybe just a glancing statement. This is a really ugly situation for the NFL, in my opinion. What was your take on all that?
My take on all that was that selfishly, I would like to think as a parent that my son would never do that. That I would have raised a kid who has enough about him to understand both my situation and the position you're putting somebody else in, somebody who is aspiring to realize a lifelong dream. And you're just going to be some clown because you want the social media clicks. And I mean, that's really what it came down to. Like they couldn't keep it to themselves, that they actually had to put out there that they were the ones who did it because they wanted the credit for it, which is mind boggling to me. So I think that as a parent, I would be crushed, absolutely crushed if my kid did that. I would feel like a failure as a parent. The bigger thing, though, for the league is, do they have to think more about the security of, how they're going about this dissemination of this information? Now, the son evidently got this off of his father's laptop. The laptop was left open and all this information was on there. I don't know what kind of security exists through the NFL with all of that, but they're absolutely going to have to look into this because it's so embarrassing for the league.
Why does an assistant coach need this information? How does he have that email? Like, to me, the general managers, head coaches, and team owners should be the only people that have the numbers of these players that could be contacted during the NFL draft. That doesn't make sense. That's on the NFL. But what constantly stuck with me, and as I watched these clips, and I never did even watch all of it because it made me very uncomfortable. I hated the thought. This is a life-changing opportunity for these individuals. And so this would be, and to draw some conclusions or to connect dots for those people that are like, I don't even know, Jeff, like, is it that big of a deal? Think if you were trying to get into a school of your choice, you're an 18-year-old, you've been put in all the work, you got all the references, and you're waiting. You're waiting for a phone call, an email, for a letter to show up, and your phone rings, and someone says, you know what? This is Harvard University. We're glad to tell you that you got in. And you're ecstatic. And then it's like, nope, we're just messing with you. You didn't get in. You suck. And so that would be unbelievably heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching in every sense of the term. And then you even throw in, like, let's say it's a dream job. You know, you apply for your dream job. If I get this job, it's just going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. Get a phone call. Hey, congratulations. You got the job with Fans First Sports Network. Are you serious? Nope. Just kidding. You suck. Like, that's not, I found it to be an unbelievable poor taste. I hate the fact that these people were labeled as fraternity guys. They weren't fraternity. I was in a fraternity. I hate when, like, the fraternity, that world, that Greek life gets labeled as very douchey people, which in this case it is. I hated that. I was not like that. My fraternity brothers weren't like that. I don't know. But I honestly think that this was swept under the rug really quick after the draft, and no one talked about it after like 2 days after the draft. But I don't know, Coach, any final thoughts on that?
Oh, they find Jeff Ulbrich a lot of money. They find the organization. Your point about why does he have the numbers, even amplified by the fact that he's the defensive coordinator. Why does he got Shedeur Sanders' number? That guy's a quarterback, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. No. I just come back to the fact, how could your kid not know that this was going to put you, the dad, in a horrendous spot? That is, I'll tell you. Me and my son, we'd have to have a come to Jesus moment after that one.
Yes. We would be having words for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. I want to ask you, this is a question I've asked on other podcasts. I want to get your take on it. And that's rookie expectations, because now you have phase 3 of OTAs going on. Mandatory minicamp, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is coming up. Expectations for rookies are sometimes extremely unfair. An example would be Will Howard, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers, a 6th-round draft pick. Well, people don't view this guy as a 6th-round pick. They're thinking this is the next Tom Brady, who was drafted in the 6th round. Maybe this is the next Antonio Brown, different position, but drafted in the 6th round. When you think of when players are drafted, meaning what round they're drafted, what are your expectations for them in their first season? So 1st-round pick, what do you expect from that player? 2nd-round pick, 3rd round, et cetera, et cetera. Coach, what are your expectations for these players?
I think it's different depending on what position that they play, because certain positions can acclimate a little bit faster. Linemen in particular, obviously quarterbacks should, unless maybe you're the number 1 overall pick in the draft, should take some time to be able to work their way into the starting lineup. But in the 1st round, I think you want a guy who's an impact player as a rookie. I mean, ideally, he should be able to start as a rookie. As you get to the back end of the 1st round, maybe that guy is a rotational player early on. You get guys on day 2 of the draft in rounds 2 and 3, and they should also be players who can find their way into your lineup in some way, shape, or form as a rookie, whether it's on special teams or preferably as a situational player, right? You take a running back in the 3rd round. He's got to be a rotational guy. He's got to be able to work in. Maybe he's not your bell cow running back getting 25 carries a game, but maybe he's getting 4 or 5 touches, and he's your 3rd down guy, and he's contributing a little bit on special teams, et cetera. Anything beyond that, 4th round and on, for me, if you just make the roster, I think that's a big deal. If you look at the success that teams have over the years, I did a study on this for a podcast I did maybe a year ago. I found that from 2000 to 2023, I think I studied 23, 24 years, something like that. On average, if you drafted 7 players, 2.7 of those players stayed on your roster for more than 2 years. And that meant that, like, you had a 50% chance of just rostering your draft class. And then you had about a 25% chance of those guys sticking around to the end of their first contract.
That's insane. And I've heard other numbers which are equally as damning when it talks about how many of them get a second deal, not just getting past year 2, but getting a second contract with the team that drafted them. It's astonishing. So you're saying, in your opinion, just to clarify, a 1st-round draft pick, you expect them to be an impact player or a starter almost from day 1, correct?
By the time you get to the regular season, I would hope that my 1st-round pick can be on the field for us. Yes.
And that's, again, it depends on the position.
Correct.
Quarterbacks take some time. But then you talk about day 2 picks, you're expecting them to contribute in some way. right? In year one. And
I
then
would like to think, yes,
yeah.
that those players, again, they don't have to be starters, but if I'm drafting a guy in the top 100 overall, I would hope that as a rookie, he can contribute, he can make an impact, that he's not a guy that needs a red shirt year, so to speak.
Yeah. And then day 3, it's like whatever you get from them is
Whatever, it's a bonus for
it's
me.
a bonus. It's a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even then, and I agree with your expectations, even then you still have stories of players who are high profile players who went on to be in the Hall of Fame who were not falling in line with those expectations. And the first one that comes to mind is Troy Polamalu. The Steelers traded up and got him in 2003, and he basically was a special teamer in year 1. And you're thinking, the hell's going on? Like, they traded up to get this guy? Well, 2004, things changed. He started to figure it out, but it's always different for everyone. I agree with your expectations for sure when it comes to rookies. Everyone's different. Some people think if you're drafted, you need to make the team, you need to be an impact player. My theory is if you're a 7th round pick, there's no guarantee you're making the roster. You earn it. So,
yeah, and the staying power. Look at the Steelers 2022 draft class.
Oh,
they have none of them are left on the roster. So none of them earned a second contract with the team. And the Steelers are generally regarded as being a pretty good team in terms of drafting players. So it is a inexact science, to say the least.
All right, let's go to our next topic. I saw this from Matt Williamson, who is a former scout in the NFL. He also does work for the Steelers official website and their podcast network. He posted an image, which was regular season wins since 2000 in the National Football League. And I sent it to you. I was like, we should talk about this. Maybe just some surprises of teams that won a lot, surprises of teams that haven't won a lot. So as you can imagine, the top teams, I think we probably all would have guessed since 2000, 25 years, the team with the most wins was the New England Patriots with 270. The second team, the Pittsburgh Steelers with 255. Green Bay is third with 251. The Baltimore Ravens are fourth with 244. And to round out the top 5, the Philadelphia Eagles with 242. Let's go to the bottom 5. Okay, 5th worst, Houston Texans with 162. The Las Vegas Raiders with 161, Detroit Lions with 158, Jacksonville with 153, and the worst team, the lowest team, Cleveland Browns, 139 wins in the last 25 years. Coach, when you looked at this list, what surprised you? Anything?
Well, I think that there's a lesson to be learned in that list. And you kind of have to asterisk a team like the Texans because they were a new franchise, took them a while to get on their feet, et cetera. But the teams at the top, the New Englands, the Pittsburghs, the Green Bays, Baltimores, et cetera, they're characterized by stability. Bill Belichick was there forever. Mike Tomlin, Harbaugh. You had Holmgren, and then McCarthy, and now you're into the LaFleur era. Good quarterback play. They all had franchise quarterbacks for a long period. So those are organizations that found the right combination of quarterbacks and coaches and created stability as a result. And then you go to the bottom of that list. And I think the Browns are the most obvious example. I mean, they have had 20 quarterbacks at least this century, probably close to that in terms of head coaches, well into the teens, I'm sure. The instability, the inability to find those cornerstones for your franchise create losing cultures, and we see it in the results here.
How long has Stefanski been there? Do you know off the top of your head?
This will be his 6th year.
6 years. So they're
Which
trying.
For the Browns, that's a run. Yeah.
That is one hell of a run.
Yeah.
Now the quarterback situation has been in a state of flux ever since he was brought in, but still they're at least keeping a coach, especially one that's been the coach of the year, 2 times, I think, in his tenure. They're at least trying that. Jacksonville, Detroit seems to be finding their way in terms of coach and stability and figuring out some things. I would be very interested to take a look at the most regular season wins since, let's say, 2015. So now we're talking the last 10 years. New England probably would not be near the top 5, I wouldn't imagine. Steelers, maybe on the fringe. They're always that 9-10 win team. Kansas City would have to be higher. Kansas City is let's see, 1, 2, 3, 7th on this list is 232 wins since 2000. I'd imagine they would be at the top, don't you think?
Yeah, I would think so, for sure.
Who would be at the very bottom since 2015? Would it still be Cleveland? A team like Chicago might be down in the bottom 5. They've struggled mightily.
The
What do you
Jets
think
will
about that?
certainly be there. The Jets and
The
the
Jets.
Giants. The Giants have had double-digit losing seasons in like 6 out of the last 7 years. So they'd be there.
Yikes. San Francisco might find themselves up at the
Higher.
top
Yeah.
as higher as well. And so would Buffalo. Buffalo's at
Buffalo for sure.
198 since 2000. They'd be up there. It's just an interesting thing to discuss. And like you said, it always brings up the stability component. That's what it's always about, just getting everything together, drafting well, getting the general manager in step with the head coach. And we'll see how this thing turns out. Maybe I'll try to figure out since 2015 exactly what that looks like. All right, let's go to we have our final topic. And this is I'm a golf guy. I do a golf podcast. I love golf. I'm enamored with the sport right now. But anyways, what happened this past weekend was that the Masters, the most prestigious golf tournament, every year they do this, they have a lottery. Anyone can enter the lottery. And if your number gets pulled or your name gets pulled, you've earned yourself tickets to the Masters at some point. Maybe it's for a practice round. Maybe it's for round 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, if you win, you still have to pay, but it's a way for them to just say, hey, it's going to be tough. We're not just going to give these out to our corporate sponsors. The Masters does not have a lot of sponsors in that regard. They do it different. And I said that to you. I said, do you think the NFL should do this with the Super Bowl? To give fans an opportunity to win a ticket through a lottery system. Again, you still have to pay for the ticket. You still have to pay for your way to get there. It's not like you're winning a sweepstakes where you get it all for free. Do you think the NFL should do something like that?
It would be interesting to see if they went that route, how much of a response you would get, simply because of what it costs for a ticket to the Super Bowl. I don't know.
And you don't know who's going to be in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if it would work the same way. You know who's going to be in the Masters.
Right.
But man, I can't imagine you can get a Super Bowl ticket for cheaper than $1,000. I don't know that for a fact.
Sure, the luxury, what they would be giving away, not giving away, but optioning off would not be the lower bowl. You'd be in the upper deck.
Yeah.
And they would have to tell you how much tickets are. You can see how much tickets are for the Masters, depending on the day that's selected. I think a practice round is a couple $100 a ticket for sure. Would you enter if they say you get an upper deck seat? You have no idea who's going to be in the Super Bowl, but you know where it is. So you can kind of figure out exactly what airfare is going to be, hotel accommodations. Would you enter as a fan of football to try and get yourself a ticket to the Super Bowl?
Absolutely not. No. Football is one of the few sports that's better on TV than it is live. It's live. The one cool thing about live is you see the plays develop like in all 22, depending obviously on your seat. But I just find the convenience of being home for that, having the replay, especially as a coach. I just like to replay stuff and look at it again and again. It annoys the hell out of my wife. But just that and the fact that, a lot of times in football games, you're standing outside in the freezing cold forever. We went to that game in Philadelphia in December, Steelers-Eagles game. We froze our butts off, and the Steelers got their butts kicked. There was very little that was enjoyable about that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So I think, baseball, like you go to a baseball game and it's social. There's a lot of sitting around. You talk to people, you get food, you walk around the stadium. You get to a basketball game where you're right there on the court. You're really close. You're indoors, and so the vibe is different. I just don't think football is as good a spectator sport as some of the others.
Yeah, obviously, as we compare this to the Masters, I draw those conclusions to golf. Now, I've been to major tournaments, not the Masters. I swear I got to get there before I die. But other than that, I've been to major tournaments. And the difference is, for me, yeah, you do a good job of comparing to like basketball and other sports, baseball. In golf, you have acres upon acres to have people spread out. You're not sitting around on top of each other. Now, you also do have unbelievable access to players, meaning if Scotty Scheffler's teeing off, I could be 5 feet away from him watching him. So that's a little different, but you never get to see everything at the same time. When you're on a golf course, 18 holes, you can try to position yourself in an area like Amen Corner at Augusta National, where you're going to get to see some really good golf and some really difficult holes as they move their way through those 3 holes. But golf, if at least football, it's all right there. Like you're not having to pick and choose. Like you're getting to see it. I can't say I would enter it either.
Yeah.
I don't think I would try, just because really I have no interest in going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, imagine you enter it and you win, Jeff, and then it's Baltimore against Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. And you'd be like, who am I rooting for here?
Can I sell my tickets is the question I would be looking up. All right. So speaking of golf, and it's going to lead into our player profile, Peyton Manning. I saw a video that they just finished up the Memorial Tournament in Dublin, Ohio at the Muirfield Village. That's Jack's tournament and his course, Jack Nicklaus. And Peyton Manning was paired with Scotty Scheffler. He actually wins the Pro-Am, but they have a video of him jacking a house on the first tee. He duck hooks one left, and you just hear this loud smack. And he just kind of plays it off like nothing. And Scotty Scheffler just starts doubling over and laughing, like, hey, good morning. How's it going? But Peyton Manning, as I thought about it more, I was like, what a unique guy in a football sense. When you think about how many players have ever had a tremendous amount of success with the team they were drafted by, leave, have a tremendous amount of success and win a Super Bowl with their second team. But then also Peyton Manning, who's kind of like that oh shucks country boy, reinventing himself after the game, starting like the Omaha Productions, doing his show, like the Peyton Manning show, which is on ESPN Plus, which is it's hilarious. He and his brother Eli doing the Manning cast on Monday Night Football. I was like, yeah, I saw the video, brought up his name, and I was like, he's an interesting guy. Yeah. Super successful, Hall of Fame, obviously. What's your takeaway on Peyton Manning as he finds his new venture in life?
I agree. I love him. His Saturday Night Live appearances have been awesome. The locker room skit where they're like dancing the coach's motivational speech, and they saw
the Boys and Girls Club was way better than when he's pelting his. Go sit in the porta potty.
He's great, man, and he's relatable. Like he can make fun of himself.
Yeah,
the fact that he hit that house. I mean, I've hit a house. My uncle lives down in Florida. We were playing on a course down there with him. I shanked one and drilled this house, and my uncle was like, "Just leave it in his yard. Don't go get that." I said, "Okay," but I mean, that's relatable. That's how normal people are. And you're right. He and his brother have given off. His brother doing the Chad Powers stuff where he acts like he's a 27-year-old walk-on quarterback at a low-level college.
At Penn State.
Penn State. Okay. Great stuff, man.
I do love it. And, Peyton Manning was a guy that as a player, he was so serious and so cerebral. And of course, if anyone says, Jeff, like what's one memory you have of Peyton Manning? It's always the same one. It's 2005 AFC divisional round where the Steelers go into the RCA Dome and they beat Peyton Manning and the Colts. I still swear that Super Bowl 40 run, that was the Super Bowl for me. That game was it. When they won that game, I felt like they won the Super Bowl. They ended up going on and winning the Super Bowl. The AFC Championship at Denver wasn't that good. The Super Bowl against Seattle was awful. It was that game. That was the best game of the playoffs. But
remember his line after the game about
he had some
Mike
protection
Vanderjagt? Well, Mike Vanderjagt.
What did he say after?
He called him that idiot kicker. He said we might have won the game if that idiot kicker didn't get the field goal. Beautiful.
Oh my gosh, he had never missed a kick and all that stuff.
Yep.
Well, I remember Peyton Manning after the game saying, "Look, we had some protection problems," and they were like, "Oh, he's throwing his offensive line under the bus." No, he saved that for the kicker.
Yeah.
All right, show. Good show, Coach. Why don't you tell us what's coming up with your Call Sheet Daily stuff?
Yeah, Call Sheet Daily, Monday through Friday. In the mornings, it usually runs. Monday, we did what was really interesting documentary on Netflix right now called Manhunt about the mission to track down and eventually kill Osama bin Laden. And they get into a really fascinating element of that, where how the Navy SEALs trained for that raid on that compound in Pakistan. And I was using it as a springboard into a conversation on how football coaches practice and prepare for their games. And, what can you learn from the way that SEAL Team 6 trained? It was a really interesting episode. So I jumped into that on Monday. Tomorrow is our Whiteboard Wednesday. Last week we did offensive execution in the 2-minute drill. This week we're doing defensive execution in the 2-minute drill. So we got a lot of good stuff going on.
Check it out wherever you get your podcast by searching the Call Sheet Daily with Kevin Smith. Coach, as always, another great show. Thanks for your time. We'll talk next week. Take it easy.